Bro, listen. This time our MC has finished the game 19 times, and on his 20th playthrough, he grinded for months in the beginner area before even starting the main quest line, maxing out his character at level 9,1999. But the moment he clicked play, he was actually transported into the game. Unfortunately, he didn't become the 9-9 character, but the Demon King, that guy's enemy. Worst of all, he lost his OP character from the start and got nerfed, while every demon general in his faction wants to kill him because they know he's weak as hell. At least he has this 6-armed blonde T-Sunder to cheer him up. But the question is, how can a nerfed Demon King survive? An absurdly OP hero, and the wrath of all his subordinates. His answer? Farming. I know that sounds like a terrible solution, but hear me out. He's completed this Souls, like game 19 times, and knows every last detail. The system also showed him the way. The happier his demon army becomes, the more of his Demon King power he can use. In theory, it sounds like he's going to be a nice guy. But holy Jesus, this MC is the ultimate menace. What he does to poor Azeroth is the most disrespectful thing I've ever seen in any manhwa. So without further ado, let's get into it. My name is Yahello. What a cursed name. I'm just an ordinary Korean student, or at least I used to be. Yesterday I became Kratos, the Demon King and final boss of the game I was playing. Total cliche, right? The game is called Blood Paladin, and the goal is to awaken a sleeping hero, like some male version of Cinderella. But here's the problem. At that moment, a butler enters and calls for Kratos. It's Zephyros, and he says the preparations for war are complete. Outside, an entire crowd of demons is screaming. Azuret, the Blood Prince, is there too at level 534. Beside him stands Sergi, the Ice Monarch, along with Hardik, the Archduke of Shadows and Head Butler. And of course, there's the classic Musclehead Ball at level 539. Standing before them all, Kratos calls out to everyone and orders the army to listen. As the Lord of all demonkind, he has something important to announce. Their current war will be put on hold because they need to focus on harvesting crops and raising livestock. A crowd of demons looks around in confusion, then starts freaking out and calling the idea ridiculous. But then the Demon King gives them a death glare. Everyone falls completely silent. Of course, there's a reason he doesn't want to begin this war. Right then, a notification appears. Someone is starting their 20th playthrough of the game. It's a player called Age Kimchi, level 9,099, and Kratos knows he's destined to die by this guy's hand. That's when he explains that he graduated from Korea University's farming program and became a wealthy farmer. He was seriously one of the best. He was so talented that even his professors asked him to help write their theses. That bald professor would ask him for help with yet another project. Whenever he went to the fields, people naturally asked him to work there too. In truth, all that talent only turned him into the #1 slave. What kind of cursed life was that? He had all that skill, yet everyone else took credit for his work. He screams that he wants to kill all those bastards, and his dopamine levels have hit rock bottom. That's when he decided he needed some excitement in his life. And what better choice than a good old video game? He wanted something that would give him the thrill of achieving a goal he actually cared about. That's how he became the first person to complete the game 19 times. He's exhausted now, but says it was totally worth it. And yes, he's incredibly strong. So he begins his 20th playthrough on health difficulty. First, he had to level everything up. And after all that grinding, his character is already maxed out and wearing some odd-looking gear that must be incredibly OP. He stands there wondering how many years have passed. This guy was seriously committed. The game asks whether he wants to begin, and he says, of course, then clicks without hesitation. But this time the monitor begins to glow, and he feels something pulling him inside. Suddenly his soul leaves his body and gets sucked into the TV. Something lights up in the middle of the sky. Flying over a forest, he wonders, what is this? Okay. I need to calm down. First, I know this is my soul, so I probably won't die even if I fall. And over there, that's the Tower of Life. No way. I've really entered the world of Paladin. Then he spots the tomb and excitedly heads toward it, knowing that's where Age Kimchi is. But the moment he comes face to face with the blonde guy holding a staff, he thinks, why does this character look so awful? Suddenly his soul takes a sharp turn and goes flying somewhere else. He screams in despair, begging for anything but this. That's how he ends up inside Kratos' body. He can't believe he lost his chance to become Aged Kimchi just because he thought the outfit looked stupid. Meanwhile, Zephyros overhears several demons saying, there's no way Kratos is still as strong as he used to be. The vampire-looking guy suggests they join forces, cut off his head, and seize the throne. But Hartok asks what happens if he isn't weaker. All 4 of them could die trying something like that. Sergi says she'll only agree if Azeroth attacks first. Bo, meanwhile, is starving and doesn't care about any of this. Then the guy asks, if I prove the Demon King has truly weakened, will you all have the courage to act? Everyone immediately smiles and says that if that's true, they're in. Zephyros overhears everything and says, my dear Demon King, the demons are gathering to take you down. They say you've grown weaker and are considering cutting off your head. Trembling, he thinks that if all four attack him, he'll definitely die. But if he appears weak, he'll die anyway. What he really wants to know is what happened to aged Kimchi. Did no one possess him? Was his body simply left behind like a corpse? Just then, Zephyros tells him to watch a recording from the orb. It was captured at the tomb, where a blonde kid was slaughtering every demon in sight. The guy literally reaches inside and tears out one creature's eye before, staring directly into the camera. Kratos immediately realizes that whoever is inside that body is far from normal. He can't leave the castle. If he surrenders, he'll look weak and the generals will kill him. But if he enters the human world, that level 9-9-9-9 monster will kill him instead. The poor guy starts crying, saying he entered this game to find a little happiness, not even more trouble. Then he stands up with determination and says he'll first solve the food crisis to calm everyone down. Zephyros asks where his majesty is going, and Kratos apologizes for not explaining earlier. He's searching for land to start a small farm. Zephyros gives him a strange look, while the Demon King is just as confused. Zephyros points out that he used to be arrogant and self-important, so why is he suddenly apologizing? Kratos finds that strange too. Zephyros was basically a background character in the story. He appeared once and was killed by the hero. Even so, he was strangely popular. That's because when he died, he apologized to the Demon King for being weak. People admired how deeply he respected his lord and grew fond of him. But now he's just being annoying, rambling about how he never seen a Demon King lose face so quickly. Kratos tries to intimidate him, but Zephyros clearly doesn't care and simply asks where this farmland is supposed to be. If he means the nearby land, he should already know that nothing can grow there. Kratos replies that he knows this place is called the Land of Death, but with his current abilities, he can bring it back to life. He kneels, scrapes up some dirt with his hand, and eats it, my god. Zephyros immediately writes down that, unfortunately, the Demon King is mentally impaired and eating dirt. Kratos tells him to stop writing, but Zephyros says it's part of his job. Since his lord appears mentally unstable, keeping records is especially important. Kratos ignores him, spits out the dirt, and realizes it contains no nutrients. Nitrogen is a basic element plants need to grow, and although the atmosphere contains 78% nitrogen, plants can only use it once it enters the soil. When humans discovered that, it marked the beginning of agricultural engineering. Kratos knows lightning is one way to make it happen. When lightning strikes, it oxidizes nitrogen in the soil. And what is Kratos' main power, lightning? He cuts his hand and tries to activate Blood Strike. But wait, no, that's actually what activated when the hero died. He tells Zephyros to step back. This time he really cuts his hand and man, it hurts like hell. He can't understand how that lunatic used this skill so casually every time. Then he senses something strange and looks behind him. His entire crew is staring at him as if he's weak. He jumps in fright at these bastards. While Zephyros says he's 100% certain Kratos has weakened. Kratos asks whether he's trying to kill him too. At that moment, he shouts that enough is enough. The pain can't be worse than dying. He activates Blood Strike. But all he really does is stain the sun with his own blood, and it still hurts like hell. Then someone behind him calls out Lord Kratos. Are you feeling a little unwell today? Right then he realizes these bastards are going to kill him. Meanwhile, somewhere far away, aged Kimchi is wandering around. He remembers his past lives and knows he has walked this same path more than 10 times. He once carried something called the Summon of Duty, but now it has vanished. Yet he no longer even knows what he's supposed to live for. He simply stands there, lost in thought, while back with Kratos the entire group stares him down. Azurette steps forward and asks whether he is the great Demon King, the strongest of all demon lords. Kratos panics. He knows this guy is insanely powerful while he currently can't use a single skill. Still staring, Azurette says the pressure is unreal. The fight hasn't even begun, yet Kratos has built up so much energy that his whole body is trembling. Even so, he continues. Do you really think you can face all 4 of us? 3 of them have already hidden behind a tree. Kratos turns around and realizes he's completely alone. Everyone just stands there, staring at him, and saying he should have realized by now that this was hopeless. Now he's in serious trouble because he's completely on his own. He points us out that they're all demons, and they simply reply, of course we are. Suddenly Zephyros pulls out a projector and says that according to Demon Wall, fights like this are to the death. No one can back out. Azurath, terrified only moments ago, steels himself and remembers that the Demon King has weakened. Kratos trembles, repeatedly wondering what he should do. He just tested his strength, and considering how easily Kratos used that last move, he can't be that weak. Before he can finish thinking, Azura charges at him and announces his attack. Kratos remembers that this guy really only has two moves, a sideways slash or a forward thrust. He assumes dodging will be impossible, yet somehow avoids the attack. Slightly confused, he notices that the guy still has the same habits. Whenever his foot points forward, he follows with a direct attack. Kratos slips while dodging and slides backward. Hartok remarks that the way he avoided it was terrifying. One wrong judgment and his arm would have been gone. Another attack comes and he dodges again. Kratos begins to realize that all moves are exactly like those in the game. The first time he faced this guy, the fight seemed hopeless. He was fast, full of feints, constantly using misdirection, and had countless attack patterns. But after dying once, twice, 3 times, then 10, and finally 128 times, he began to understand. During his 19th full playthrough, he even tried defeating him without taking a single hit. And now in this real battle, he has already figured everything out. There's no chance this guy can land a single blow on him. The demons hiding nearby watch nervously as he rolls from side to side with a grin. They now believe the Demon King never lost his power. He's merely toying with poor Asura without even fighting back. Asura boils with rage, while Kratos realizes that although he may not be able to win, he won't die either. The moment he understood that the game's rules applied here, the system announced that he had begun grasping how this world worked. Kratos instantly recognizes it. It looks exactly like a pop-up from the webtoon system. Congratulates him for dodging attacks through concentration alone. As a reward, he receives something only playable characters can possess. He unlocks the ability to select a target. The moment a small green mark appears, he knows exactly what it means. It's the indicator for activating a special skill. Without hesitating for even a second, he slashes forward and activates Blood Strike. This time it works, blasting poor Asura with electricity while the other demons stand frozen, their jaws hanging open. The guy collapses to his knees, his entire body trembling. Kratos, however, is shocked that Asura is somehow still alive. That's because this ability always caused instant death in the game. So he decides to strike him again, just to make sure he goes down for good. The surrounding demons gasp and whisper that he's using only a fraction of his power, keeping Asura alive just to prolong his suffering. Meanwhile, Kratos has no idea how to finish him off. The system chimes in, but only reports that Asura's clothes have been destroyed, leaving him completely naked. At least that unlocks a new system feature. Armor removal has been activated. He opens his inventory and finds all the gear he had equipped still inside, but he ignores it for now because his top priority is getting rid of Azurath. The problem is that he's not strong enough to finish him. Then an idea comes to him. Since Azurath is already on the ground, he can strike him with lightning. Impact will travel through the ground and create the nitrogen he needs in the soil. Honestly, he's kind of a genius. The other demons, meanwhile, hide behind trees and tremble in fear. Kratos calls to Sergi and orders her to tie up Azurath. The poor girl asks why he's humiliating the man so badly when he's already been defeated, but Kratos doesn't care. He straight up crucifies the guy and props him upright. With that, the perfect lightning rod is ready. Suddenly, Asura opens his eyes and declares that the immortal has recovered. Since he's still alive, he becomes convinced that the Demon King truly has weakened. But he doesn't get to speak much longer, because another lightning bolt immediately silences him, while nitrogen begins spreading into the atmosphere. Kratos orders Hartog to blanket the entire area in fog so dense that water condenses from the air. Hartog is surprised and wonders whether Kratos plans to soak the area so the lightning hurts even more. Honestly, it's such a creative torture method that he feels he's learned something new. The fog rolls in, and tiny droplets begin falling over Asura's body, just as another bloody lightning strike hits him. Kratos winces because the ability hurts like hell every time he scratches himself to activate it. Meanwhile, Zephyros watches the entire scene, along with the others, and all of them are starting to feel uneasy. But the protagonist is celebrating. The soil will soon be rich in nitrogen, leading to an abundant harvest. More lightning crashes down, with bolts stretching all the way to the horizon. Later he digs up some soil, and sees that its condition is already improving. The only problem is that the particles are too fine and won't penetrate the soil. He needs to create space and add the perfect material, obviously manure. So he immediately orders everyone to bring him a huge pile of crap. The others, already covered in blood, stand there wondering whether he really intends to dump feces on poor Asura. Meanwhile, deep within a forest, aged Kimchi is walking when he hears someone crying for help. He looks to the side, and man he has just found Walmart versions of Javier and Lloyd. Poor knockoff Lloyd says goblins attacked them and begs for help, but Kimchi merely glares at him, making both men tremble. The man begs him to calm down, insisting there's nothing suspicious about him. But that outfit looks incredibly sketchy. He notices that Temu Javier has injured his leg. He throws him over his shoulder and tells Shopi Lloyd to lead the way. They introduce themselves as Riva, Gavier spelled backward, and Bloyd. You can figure out the rest. Javier asks who the blonde kid is, and he replies that that's exactly what he's trying to discover. Back at the Demon King's castle, Hartog asks how they're supposed to gather so much poop, and where they're supposed to find it out of nowhere. Surti says she has no idea, but the whole request is disgusting. Ball groans that it's hopeless. He hasn't eaten in ages, and women don't poop. Hartog immediately says that's beside the point. Even if they could contribute, he certainly won't use his own. So what's the plan? Beat some low-ranking demons until the crap comes out. Meanwhile, a poor demon crouches in the middle of a pit, asking everyone to wait outside. He just can't do it. One soldier reports to Hartog that they're having trouble getting results. Hartog enters and asks whether he truly can't go. The demon explains that he hasn't eaten in ages because the entire place is basically bankrupt. Hartog then grabs him by the neck and announces that he has a brilliant idea. He swings his blade, but Bale grabs his arm and says, "If you cut open his stomach, how will he produce what we need?" Hartog releases the poor demon and admits that's surprisingly intelligent for Ball. Then how about this? They can feed the demon his own flesh so he starts producing what they need. Bale simply stares at him, his aura fully activated, while the smaller demon curls up in the corner and trembles. The two are about to fight when Kratos suddenly appears and strikes them both with lightning, reminding them that humans and demons aren't the only creatures that defecate. Sitting on his throne, he explains that every kind of feces contains nutrients. They're going to make fertilizer. Zephyr asks what that is, and Kragos explains that it's essential for improving the soil. It's normally made from wood scraps, plants, eggshells, chicken droppings, and all sorts of old waste. The problem is that they currently have almost none of those materials. He asks for a map, and within seconds, it appears in his hands. Just as expected, it's exactly the same map from the game. He knows about a region filled with a certain type of bird. Though these particular birds are clearly demonic, their enormous population proves they can absorb many different nutrients from this land. Better yet, they live on peaks rising from the middle of the sea, making it the perfect place to find what he needs. Zephyros immediately understands and asks whether he plans to collect droppings from those demonic seagulls. He reminds Kratos that the place is called the Peak of No Return. There is nothing to hold on to. Anyone who falls will either be crushed or swept away by the waves. Kratos says he's already well aware. Players weren't even meant to access that area, but he managed to do it. And now, they're standing directly before it. Everyone wonders what the hell he's planning this time. Countless people have attempted to scale those cliffs, and every one of them was swallowed by the ocean. Kratos tells them he'll climb to the top and throw down bags of material, so they need to be ready to catch them. If the plan succeeds, everyone will finally eat well. Ball looks around and remembers how thin everyone has become. They're truly in terrible condition. Thank heaven the farmer demon king finally arrived. Kratos remembers that he first attempted this climb on his 30th playthrough. After hundreds upon hundreds of attempts, he discovered the secret. With everyone watching, he jumps and grabs onto the cliff. He knows he can succeed because he knows how to exploit a certain glitch. His hands begin sinking into the stone as everyone watches closely. At that moment, Kratos opens his inventory and unequips all his gear. Suddenly, the entire crowd gets a clear view of his bare butt. Everyone trembles in shock. He twists to the side, and Surti immediately looks away. He puts all his gear back on and clings to the wall like a lunatic. She glances back at him with a twisted expression. He unequips everything again, exposing his butt. Then he's dressed, then naked, then fully visible. Then his butt appears again. He keeps switching, body butt, body butt. Suddenly, he reaches the top like a complete badass. Long ago, he discovered this bug. Unequipping and re-equipping gear while climbing lets him slip slightly through walls. Then Bel says that if His Majesty promised to feed everyone, he has to do his part too. Zephyros tells him to stop, but the lunatic starts running and hurls himself at the wall, trying to grab hold. Kratos shouts, demanding to know what the hell he's doing. Naturally, the idiot slams straight into the rock and fails to catch anything. Now the protagonist has to grab Bull's hand. Once again, he's glitching through the wall while naked. The problem is that Ball is the heaviest of them all. Kratos pauses and wonders why he's even trying to save him. Ball is one of the 4 demons who wants him dead. Even Ball looks confused and can't understand why Kratos is rescuing him. Then the protagonist remembers a friend who once said the professor wouldn't let him submit his test. If he failed, his life would be over and he'd become a slave. He begged, "Can you help me? Just ask him to review my grades. I'm sure he'll listen to you. Every professor loves you." The guy was only a junior who constantly followed him around. Since the protagonist was the professor's favorite errand boy, perhaps the professor really would have listened. But back then he told the junior to deal with it himself, because it wasn't his problem. He feared that getting involved would damage his standing with the professors, so he stayed out of it. Looking back now, he realizes he might have been able to help. And just like then, perhaps he can help Ball now, if he pushes himself a little further. He tells himself to give everything he has and surpass his limits. Maybe then his memory of that student can at least end with a smile. He focuses all, the strength in his body, and even though the strain causes his arm to give out, he still manages to throw Ball upward. Naturally, our boy injures himself in the process. A demon asks why he went so far when he didn't have to. Kratos stands and says, "This hurts less than abandoning a follower, and I won't regret it." Suddenly, Ball begins to cry. Kratos wonders whether that student would have reacted the same way if he'd helped him back then. All he can do now is apologize. Then the system appears and congratulates him for drawing out so much power from the Demon King's body without assistance. As a result, he earns the genuine admiration of one of the 4 great demons. From now on, every action that makes a demon happy will earn him HP or happy points. The happy point system has been unlocked. Kratos is baffled by the idea of collecting happy points. What is he supposed to do with them? Buy a lollipop? The system immediately replies that a game like this would never hand out lollipops. Basically, whenever one of his soldiers is happy and well fed, he earns a point. He can spend those points on attributes like stamina, defense, mental strength, and magic power. He must raise all of them to 100%. Only then will he possess the full power of the real Kratos. He tries to purchase 10% stamina, but it costs 50 happy points. He can also spend the points to upgrade his skills, but improving even one skill costs 250. Kratos thinks it looks difficult, but if he gets the farm running, he may be able to earn plenty. Besides, getting stronger will improve his chances of survival, and seeing people happy and well fed feel incredible. It would satisfy his ego completely. Ball watches him and thinks this guy looks like someone about to die. He shouldn't have saved him. Then Kratos suddenly stretches out like one of those egg-laying birds and says, "Tell me when you're ready. I'm about to dump everything down for you to catch." Before the poor demons can respond, he sends a rainbow arc of crap flying directly into their faces. Kratos tells them to prepare themselves and give it everything they've got. A little later, they're surrounded by soil, eggshells, and an enormous amount of poop. He tells Sergi that since she has so many arms, she should chop everything into pieces. She immediately shouts that she's the Ice Monarch. Her arms were not made to handle poop. He glares at her and calmly says that's fine. He has another job she can perform in Ashurat's place. Unsurprisingly, she obeys immediately. Frigos flinched when she yelled, "The people of this world are truly frightening, and she's especially difficult to handle." But everything would be fine. He was the Demon King and could overcome this through sheer willpower. He orders Hartok to flood the area because the soil needs moisture. Hartok warns that wetting everything will make the smell even worse. One glare from Kratos, and Hartok is already flying overhead, doing exactly as ordered. Kratos asks Ball whether he feels better, and Ball says yes, the ground is softer now, just as Kratos predicted. Step 3 is to gather feathers and spread them over everything. The problem is that covering even a small area would take forever. To cover the entire region, they have no choice but to use every demon. Something troubles him, but he knows it must be handled now. He will move forward using the authority granted to him as ruler of this realm. Meanwhile, within the Demon King's city, a man sits inside his home with his young daughter lying in bed. She asks whether he can please feed on her. Whoa, that hits hard. Her father begs her never to say such a thing, but she says she misses her mother. Apparently another gluttonous demon came along and tried to devour her, but her mother threw herself in the way. She gave her daughter one final look before disappearing into the demon's stomach. The father says that without his daughter, he has no reason to continue living. Just then the Demon King arrives. The man recoils in shock and demands to know what the hell he's doing there. Kratos says that if he has enough energy to shout, he has enough energy to work, then orders the soldiers to seize him. The man calls out for his daughter, insisting he must care for her, but it's already too late. The Demon King continues walking and asks how many people they've gathered so far. They have 20, but they need more than 30. Looking back at the crying child, he remembers that she also appeared in the game, and as always, he used to kill her without hesitation. That memory prompts him to issue a new decree. From now on, demons are forbidden from eating other demons. Everyone will now work with Manhwa. He walks away resolutely, declaring that he is a tyrant lord and that sacrifices are necessary to achieve his goals. Beneath the scorching sun, the already emaciated demons suffer even more. One grumbles that working on a farm is ridiculous. They have no energy, yet they're wasting what little remains on this. Another warns him to watch his words, but he continues saying they'll die anyway. Even if the soil becomes fertile, what exactly are they supposed to plant? Just then Kratos appears and says he'll explain, if the demon is willing to follow him. During the fight that day, he noticed a flower growing near a tree. It was something they could cultivate. He shows it to the demon and says, that's exactly what they'll plant. Ball and the others are already gathering more. The demon recognizes it but says it isn't edible. In fact, eating it usually causes severe stomach pain. Kratos pulls one from the ground and says there's nothing else to eat here. The experiment is nearly complete, so they'll soon learn whether it works. The man asks what kind of experiment he means. Kratos replies, your daughter should be eating it right about now. The man bolts away in panic, crying for help, demanding to know why they would do this to an innocent child and praying she hasn't eaten it. He bursts through the door and finds Ball standing beside his daughter. The little girl has already eaten it. She's now plump and says she feels perfectly fine and completely full. Her father, stunned, asks whether she's truly all right. She nods and says she ate the same thing yesterday after Ellen Zephyros gave it to her. Kratos steps in and tells him to believe it. In another land, humans also learned to turn poisonous plants into edible food. A famous crop called the potato. I didn't even know potatoes were once poisonous. Overwhelmed, Flute thanks Kratos for showing kindness to someone like her. And just like that, part of the army feels genuinely happy to finally have something to eat. For the first time, Kratos earns 1 happy point. He stares at the point he just earned, then notices the little girl's smile, and remembers that she used to be a monster in the game. The contrast between who she was then and who she is now hits him hard. Just because he's the demon lord doesn't mean he always has to act serious. So he gives her a warm, beautiful smile and tells her to grow up strong and tall. The other demons immediately assume he's fattening her up to eat later. That sweet, wholesome expression on his face only confuses everyone, poor girl. The next chapter opens with a region called Chavin Deontor. The territory is divided into 5 zones, with Chavin being the outermost one. Its nights were freezing cold, while its days were scorching hot. In a place where no crops could survive, even poisonous plants were considered food. Most people would have died trying, but humans naturally refused to give up. Back in the village, Flute's father kneels and tells the demon lord that everything has been laid out. That's when our guy orders Bell to stomp all over the area and crush every single potato. After that, they'll leave the entire batch outside to freeze overnight for 5 days. Freeze and thaw over and over again. Gradually, the batch will become edible, producing potatoes that won't cause stomach pain. Once that's done, it's time to call Zephyros and prepare the squad to make even more fertilizer. Snack preparation had officially begun. A line forms and Kratos announces, all right everyone, we don't have much, so each person can take no more than 2. Zephyros finds that strange. They have plenty of soil, so why not simply grow more potatoes? Kratos explains that their current supply is nowhere near enough, and scaling up production will take time. The plan is to first convince people that these are edible, then increase production 1,000-fold. Even so, all the demons just stand there staring at the food, unsure whether it's truly safe to eat. A man in the back says his daughter ate one and felt fine, but another snaps at him to stop being an idiot and look at the demon king. That's not the face of someone generously handing out food. Even so, the man bravely steps forward and tosses the potato into his mouth, chews it, and swallows. He bursts into tears and declares, "Long live the demon king." Once the first man ate one without dying, everyone else naturally followed. All they could think was, he really gave us something edible. Just like that, everyone raised their hands and shouted that Kratos was incredible. Watching them celebrate, Kratos mutters that something is definitely wrong with that cheer. They'll need to change the chant soon. Off to the side, Zephyros wonders whether this lunatic might truly end the starvation plaguing their land. With so many full stomachs, Kratos earns 51 happy points. At last, he can level up a little. Looking over his attributes, he wonders which one would help him the most right now. While he's lost in thought, Zephyros summons the entire farming squad and orders them back to the village to spread the news. Real, edible food can be grown in this land, and any demon who comes to help will receive a voucher for potatoes at Regionable. Kratos is genuinely impressed that this clever little guy is finally proving useful. And just like that, everyone starts harvesting potatoes and planting more. Sergei slices up Manir, Hartok moistens the soil, and yes, poor Ashrid is still tied up outside. Kratos orders to move him 10 steps left, where the position is perfect. They secure him to the ground, and another lightning bolt strikes him. Kratos sighs, saying it's exhausting to do this every day just to produce enough nitrogen. But now that they've gathered a decent amount, it's time for the next step. The problem is that even with all their resources, covering the entire area remains difficult. He works out the plan. Azurath lies there desperately begging to be killed already. Without even flinching, Krigos blasts him again, while thinking that what he truly needs are soldiers who can work non-stop without complaining. Perhaps he has no choice but to wait for what comes next. Earlier he had asked Zephyros whether he'd truly summon the Star Masters. Zephyros said yes. He'd ordered them to halt their attacks and return to focus on farming, but he still hadn't received any replies. Kratos wonders whether those damned messengers starved to death along the way. He desperately needs help because spreading manure everywhere alone is getting difficult. The scene shifts to Deathcliff, the region's first zone. A demon reports that recent scouting confirms Lord Kragos has begun developing agriculture and producing edible food. The mustached demon scoffs, claiming Kratos is only doing this because he's afraid. Every time a demon dies, Saruthal, the father of the dead, grows stronger. Kratos must be trying to stop the war so neither side can gain more power. Saruthal asks whether all the messengers sent to the other regions were eliminated. The demon confirms that no one else knows Kratos intends to end the war. Saruthal hums with satisfaction. He says every demon must starve, because only then will they become fuel for his power. Once he's strong enough, he'll become the true demon lord. He then summons Ficamir and orders him to destroy everything Kratos has built, especially anything connected to farming. During one freezing night, poor Asura remains tied to the cross. Ficamir walks past and thinks that Lord Kratos is truly brutal. He reduced Asura to a living corpse just to make an example of him. Still, he reassures him, saying, "Don't worry, Asura, Sarvithul will avenge you." He summons a horde of spirits and orders them to destroy the land so it can never be used again. The spirits rush in and discover a massive covered pile. One of them says this must be the famous manure Lord Kratos has been guarding so carefully. Ficamir grins and calls it perfect. He orders them to scatter it everywhere and ruin all of Kratos' plans. Azuret watches from the corner of his eye and recalls a conversation in which Kratos said the manure needed to be thoroughly mixed into the soil and broken down. Unfortunately, they lacked enough demons, and everyone was too weak for such exhausting work. Now Ficamir is celebrating, declaring that Kratos is finished. Meanwhile, Azuret wonders what kind of unpaid labor this is. Later, one of the ghost workers complains that the enormous field seems endless. The others tell him to stop slacking and keep burying the manure. They need to spread it around and prevent Kratos from turning this place into a farm. Another spirit sitting nearby remarks that spirit number 2718 is working especially hard today. The spirit replies that he doesn't know why, but he feels great right now. It feels like the satisfaction of accomplishing something productive. The spirit beside him simply says, "You really are an idiot." Then he adds, "Whatever. Today I want to be an idiot too. Let's destroy this whole place." As they celebrate how effective their work has been, the sun begins to rise, evaporating every last one of them. They're weak to sunlight, but honestly, dying after doing something productive doesn't feel so bad. As their little souls drift upward, Ficamir remains behind in tears, saying his children succeeded and were truly the best. Now they can all rest in peace. All they want is to see Kratos' expression when he discovers what they've done. Meanwhile, inside a nearby storage building, all the harvested potatoes are being stored. The next problem is preparing them. Kratos explains that they're dormant so they won't grow even if planted. "It's like the potato was sleeping," he says, and then someone yanked it out by the hair. The shock caused the potato to faint. He knows dormancy will end faster if the potatoes are kept at around 4 degrees for 2 or 3 weeks, then moved somewhere warm. He had hoped to rely on Surti, but lately she's been completely disgusted and clearly unwilling to work. Hardock doesn't look pleased with him either. Kratos avoids angering them because both still seem one step away from betraying him. He tried raising the temperature by making the crew perform squats, but the exhausted demons had no energy and simply collapsed. After thinking it over, he tells Zephyros they're heading to the farm. He needs to do whatever he can. At the very least, he can inject more nitrogen into the soil. But when they arrive, the whole area is steaming, and he stops in his tracks. What happened here? The soil has been completely mixed. The air is thick with the stench. The land is now perfect for planting. What kind of miracle is this? Watching from the shadows, Ficamir panics, thinking the operation was a complete success. Just then, Baal appears behind him, grabs him by the ears, and announces that he found a suspicious creep hiding nearby. Kratos immediately recognizes him as one of the Deathcliff bosses from the game, so he asks him, "What the hell are you doing here?" Ficamir tries to respond, but Kratos punches him in the face before he can say a word. Zephyros asks why he struck before hearing the answer. Kratos shrugs and says the guy was obviously hiding something, so this is more efficient. Now badly battered, Ficamir mutters that the Demon King truly is cruel, only to be punched repeatedly once again. After a while, Kratos grows exhausted from beating him without getting an answer, so he opens his inventory, pours all his points into stamina, and immediately resumes punching. Eventually, Fikimir breaks and confesses that he was ordered to destroy the farm. They now know Saruthal prevented their reinforcements from ever arriving. Kratos understands the obvious reason. Saruthal grows stronger whenever a demon dies. Zephyros says that defeating Seraphal would serve as a warning to everyone. But Kratos doesn't care about that. He only wants to live peacefully and tend his farm. They say in unison that killing Seraphal is difficult because he turns into a ghost afterward. Hitting him becomes nearly impossible, and his massive territory is filled with elevated, hard-to-reach terrain. Still, Kratos knows one thing: if a pest is hiding in its nest, you destroy the entire nest. The scene shifts to Flute, who watches Asura, still tied up and trapped there, wondering when they'll finally release him. He turns toward her and asks what she's staring at. Looking sweet and innocent, she thanks him, saying that his sacrifice gave everyone food. He snaps at her, ordering her to stop humiliating the great Asura. He warns her that once he's free, she'll be the first to die. Boiling with rage, he thinks that the moment he escapes, he'll personally kill that damned Kratos. Then he hears Kratos' voice and looks to the side. Music is playing. They're holding a celebration. The second lightning post has just been installed. Everyone cheers, saying it will help produce even more food. Azuret's eyes widen. Does this mean he's finally free? No more living like a rotisserie chicken, roasted day and night. Unfortunately, they simply place the two posts side by side. Then Kriegos blasts both of them with lightning again. By now, Azuret has almost gotten used to it. He merely gets slightly crispier each time. Watching everything unfold, Sardathol screams that they can't treat poor Fikimir this way. But Kratos doesn't stop. More lightning. Zap. The man keeps crying out that it must hurt like hell. Another zap, then another, until Fisimir finally begs him to stop. That's when Kratos spots a nearby raven and immediately recognizes it. It's a messenger bird used to transmit information, confirming that Sorgatold is watching everything. That bastard tried to sabotage his crops, and now he'll pay dearly. Sometime later, beneath the blazing sun, Flute is happily working the soil, looking as adorable as ever. Azure turns toward her and asks, "Sweetheart, what are you doing?" Flute explains that the 4 generals have helped so much that she wants to contribute too. He calls her an idiot. Fikimir already prepared that entire plot, so she should do something useful instead. Flute approaches Fikimir and asks whether it's true. He prepared the soil and endured lightning strikes for everyone's sake, which was incredibly kind. Looking bashful, Fikimir says she's the kind one, and that her words made it all worthwhile. Azure again says she's accomplishing nothing by lingering there. All he knows is that heating potatoes somehow makes them better. Hearing that, Flute immediately runs away, thanking him and saying she'll try to help. As she disappears, Azra mutters, "What could a low-ranked demon like her possibly accomplish?" Back at the castle, Zephyros says, "My lord, I don't know whether your plan will work. Saruthal already knows it's a trap, so why would he come?" Kratos explains that the idiot won't come personally. He'll send his subordinates first, and every one of them will be eliminated. He's already given Baal the order. No one escapes alive. Meanwhile, Sir Ruthal is naturally watching everything unfold. He sneers that Kratos is a fool. Did he truly believe Sir Ruthal would recklessly sacrifice his own soldiers? As painful as losing Fikimir may be, he has only one objective: destroy the farm. So he orders his specters to destroy the crops and ruin every potato. Nothing can be left standing. The ghosts charge wildly into the warehouse, but Kratos is already inside waiting for them. "Just as I expected," he says. More bastards showed up. Welcome to the cemetery. He remembers the first time he encountered these enemies in the game. Back then, he panicked. Seraphil's second elite squad was a nightmare, especially because they always moved in large groups. Even worse, if anyone touched them physically, they would latch on and drain their victim's age, along with any abilities currently equipped. But Kratos knows the trick to defeating them. He asks, "Alright, who wants to be deep-fried?" The secret is simple. Use magic, especially lightning. The specters panic upon realizing it's a trap. But Kratos smirks. Too late, this is the real trap. The doors slam shut, sealed by mysterious blood. And that blood belongs to him. Kratos unleashes a massive area attack, illuminating the entire warehouse. He shouts for the guards to rush in and attack immediately. Demons surge in from every direction. With their ghostly forms stripped away, the specters are easily overwhelmed and tortured. Watching it Kratos thinks, "Man, this plan was genius on a true Demon King level." He even says aloud, "Maybe I really do belong in this world." The only drawback is that several smaller spirits survived and are darting around, casually hurling lightning bolts. Then suddenly, Flute pops out from inside the potato pile. Kratos looks over. One of the spirits is flying straight toward her, ready to steal her youth. Her father screams in terror. Although Kratos is annoyed that no one is doing their job properly, he still feels compelled to save her. but his lightning won't reach her in time. Acting on instinct, he hurls a lightning-charged potato toward her, even though he doubts it will accomplish anything. But when it strikes the spirit's head, something strange happens. The ghost tries to steal the potato's soul, and somehow it succeeds. The potato instantly sprouts leaves. The other specters panic and flee while Credo stands there in shock. Then he finally understands. Anything these ghosts touch ages rapidly, meaning they fast-forwarded the potato's biological clock. He grabs Flute and tells her she did an incredible job. Still shaken, she quickly runs off, while he turns to everyone else and declares, "We've feared Sertithul for long enough. From now on, we're taking the offensive." The next chapter opens with poor Asura, still tied to the cross and staring at the sky, wondering who he is, where he is, and what he's even living for. The sun is so beautiful. Just seeing it every day genuinely makes me happy. Asura murmurs. The only drawback is being constantly hungry. That's when the ever-adorable Flute appears, and cheerfully says everything is going well. They've harvested tons of potatoes, and Kratos is even building a new army. The moment he sees the food, Asura panics and frantically shakes his head. Flute says she'll give him just a little, then tosses a small potato toward him. It strikes him directly in the eye. He screams that he's going to kill her, but she throws 3 more, hitting both eyes and landing the last one in his mouth. As painful as it was, the potato tasted delicious. That single bite made him so happy that Kratos earned another happy point. After everything he'd done, his total had reached 302. He doesn't even know who provided the last point, but it doesn't matter. The more, the better. He needs every point he can get to prepare for the assault on Sertithul. He summons the army and orders them to prepare. They're almost there when several ghosts shout that they're going to cut the bridge. And sure enough, they cut it without hesitation. But then, Kratos simply jumps. They shout that he's an idiot. But naturally, he's about to use the butt glitch again. The spirits stare in confusion. He turns his back, flashes them once, then twice, and suddenly, he's already on top. The 2 ghosts flee, muttering about how terrifying he is. Kratos turns around, thinking everything went exactly as planned. He gestures to Zephyros, then rushes forward. From a distance, Sertithul points and orders the ghosts to kill him now that he's alone. Kratos charges ahead, once again exploiting the glitch. The man really only has one reliable move. The spirits attempt to grab him, but just before they can, he sinks into the ground. Eventually, he emerges again, surrounded from all sides. The spirits close in, saying that even the Demon King will eventually run out of stamina. But Kratos calmly replies, "I'm a veteran player." At that moment, a barrage of potatoes begins raining down from outside. The moment they strike the spirits, the ghosts begin getting absorbed and converted. Zephyros watches in awe, thinking he truly doubted the plan this time, yet the Demon Lord succeeded again. He recalls Kratos explaining that they only needed to gather all the enemies in one location and bombard them with potatoes, and it worked. On top of that, Kratos knew a secret shortcut leading directly to Sertithul. After 19 complete playthroughs, he naturally knew every path, crack, and hidden corner. While exploring this part of the map, he'd noticed a strange structure with an unusual texture, so he attacked it, and sure enough, discovered a hidden passage. That's how he found the cave leading straight to Sertithul. He also found a metamorphosis elixir and a compressed soul created from countless corpses. Who knows what that does? Back on the battlefield, the demons celebrate. At last, they have something to eat. It's when Kratos suddenly remembers his grandmother saying he looked starved and promising to cook dinner for him that night. But instead, he ended up leaving in an ambulance, didn't he? The memory leaves him emotionally devastated. He loudly declares that anyone who interferes with his determination to feed people will be utterly destroyed. Suddenly, Baal steps forward and says, "Sertithul is powerful, so he'll help." But Kratos refuses, saying Baal's job is to carry potatoes. Fighting is the boss's responsibility. Meanwhile, Sertithul stands before the great spirit of ice, summoning more beasts born from its glorious cold to spread terror and join his forces. But his chant is interrupted when a boot stomps onto his face. Confused, he asks how Kratos arrived so quickly. Kratos shrugs and says that's none of his concern. He's only here to exterminate a pest. Sertithul growls that he's a fool for coming here alone and believing he can win. Clearly, he has never witnessed the true extent of Serithul's power. But Kratos has seen it 19 times already, and he's completely sick of that cursed ability. First time he hunted Sertithul, he crossed those mountains and eliminated every spirit. Those creatures gradually gathered inside a strange crystal capable of absorbing souls, and after Sertithul absorbed enough power, he summoned even more demons. Only after defeating them would Sertithul finally reveal his true ability. A tornado would form in the sky. Sertithul would say, "You're strong, Kratos, I'll admit that." Then he'd grin and add, "That's exactly why I'm going to win." Boom, he transforms into Kratos 2.0. He can perfectly copy an enemy's stats and replicate their abilities. Since he's a late-game boss, the player is usually incredibly powerful by then, which makes him equally strong. But this time the stats he copied belonged to Kratos at that exact moment, and honestly Kratos isn't particularly strong yet. Servifiel charges toward him, but Kratos opens his inventory, immediately pours points into dexterity. He dodges the first strike on the spot, then punches Servifiel directly in the stomach. Servifiel swings again, but Kratos boosts his strength, trades blow after blow with him. Servifiel shouts, "This is impossible. How are you already at full power?" Kratos replies, "If you want to work in agriculture, you need a clear mind too." Servifiel prepares a lightning spell, cutting his hand to activate it. But Kratos is already increasing his magic power and mental strength, then unleashes his own lightning attack. Naturally, Kratos' bolt is stronger. It tears straight through Servifiel, reducing him to a puddle of sludge. The GUI remains collapsed to the ground, making him appear defeated. Then the system chimes. Since he has acquired every attribute, he now has permission to summon the throne and the farmer. It resembles a Game of Thrones chair, except it's covered in pitchforks, straw, watering cans, and other farming equipment instead of swords. Kratos lights up. At last he's receiving some proper equipment. But then the puddle speaks. This isn't over yet. Kratos sighs and says he expected that. There's always a second phase. Sardafal transforms into an ancient dragon. Kratos steps back, impressed. The bastard looks like he has an absurd amount of HP, but Kratos already has a plan. At that moment, Bale charges in with a kick from behind, bringing the entire squad with him. Kratos smiles and says it's straight out of the game's final stage. Serafal hesitates, grows slightly teary-eyed, and asks whether they can discuss this peacefully. Absolutely not. The entire squad attacks him, including every demon and farmer. They beat him mercilessly. Kratos watches, remembering that these same demons were starving not long ago. He decides that now is the perfect time to summon the throne. Clouds swirl in the sky as the throne descends from above, heading directly towards Sargothal. Boom, he's completely obliterated. Kratos stands there in disbelief. The demons stare into the crater, realizing Sarufo has been completely flattened. They cheer, saying they never imagined the Demon King could be so savage. Crushing an enemy beneath a throne was certainly a first. Kratos doesn't know what to say. That definitely wasn't his plan. Still, he joins the celebration. It was the perfect ending. Not far from Azurat, Fykamer begins glowing softly, his form lighting up adorably. The entire field has now become fertile. Potatoes are ready. Their greatest threat is gone. It's time for planting season to begin. Just as everything concludes, Sorgafal's crystal begins shaking. The system informs Kratos that this is his 20th victory over that boss. Kratos realizes the game remembers after all. As a hidden reward, a secret event is activated. The spirit trapped inside the crystal is about to awaken, with its form determined by how it was treated. Thick mist begins pouring from the crystal. Kratos steps closer, trying to understand what's happening. Naturally, since this is his world, something cute has to emerge. Well, perhaps not extremely cute. It's a dragon, but still gives him a small smile while asking for a T-bone steak. Kratos confidently approaches while the little creature blinks and silently wonders whether this man is its father. He picks up the baby dragon, which clings to him while repeatedly saying, "Steak, steak." The little creature is happy. It thought it would enter the world without ever having a father. That is until Kratos looks at him and says he's very cute, causing the dragon to tremble uncontrollably. They head home as the entire squad cheers and shouts that they'll feast tonight. The dragon looks slightly nervous, and Kratos turns toward him, saying he must grow big before he can be eaten. The poor dragon immediately assumes he's doomed, completely convinced they're fattening him for slaughter. But then Kratos stops walking. Ahead of him, the entire demon kingdom has gathered, jumping with joy and celebrating their return. Families happily wave to their children in a heartwarming scene. The little dragon begins noticing that the atmosphere here feels strangely positive. The demons don't even seem particularly frightening, until he looks up at Kratos again. Later, the dragon curls up in the corner of a room, trembling uncontrollably, poor thing. Kratos simply stares at him. The instant their eyes meet, the dragon freezes again, certain they're waiting for him to grow before cooking him. Meanwhile, Kratos is wondering what dragons are supposed to eat. He assumes they consume refined gemstones or some other rare material, which is impossible to find here. Suddenly, Zephyros arrives and reports that things aren't progressing as smoothly as expected. Proper planting requires raised mounds, and the soil needs to be rich and dense. Unfortunately, the entire area is filled with rocks. The crew is struggling to remove them, and their efforts still aren't enough. Meanwhile, little Steak sits in the corner, thinking his future is sealed. He'll be worked to death here. Forget T-Bone, we'll call him Steak from now on. It sounds much better. Kratos thinks the place resembles a coal mine more than farmland. If they keep exhausting themselves like this, their potato supply will disappear quickly. Once hunger returns, productivity will collapse. Frustrated, he wishes he were like a storybook protagonist with a special power capable of solving everything. But all he's accomplished so far is starving. Then he notices Flute, working tirelessly in the corner and digging with all her strength. That's when he realizes he needs to stop complaining. He has to find a solution to this problem as well. Suddenly someone shouts that a razor wind is approaching. It's one of those random and violent, natural disasters that Kratos had forgotten about. Anyone caught inside one is torn to pieces within seconds. He quickly orders everyone to take cover behind the rocks. Even from a distance, the pressure is overwhelming. These winds are disastrous for any form of agriculture, and naturally, Flute is about to make things worse. She runs straight toward Azurette, who remains tied up. Kratos and her father shout after her, but she's already sprinting away. Our guy hands Steak to her father, then takes off, shouting that anyone who follows him will die. Bale screams that it's too dangerous and begs him to come back and abandon them. Kratos knows that, but he can't lose their lightning rod and a new worker on the very first day. Flute desperately tries to free Azurette, while he yells at her to leave before she gets killed. Kratos charges toward them, thinking that farm life truly feels like warfare. He tells the child to move, then launches himself forward with a flying kick, shattering the lightning post. It crashes onto the ground. The wind is already slicing their skin, it's that vicious. Flute tries to pull Azurette free, but he tells her to give up. Not even the 4 heavenly kings could pull that post out. Then Kratos yanks her back, while also lifting the lightning rod over his shoulder. Watching from afar, Steak can feel the tremendous resistance in the air. He knows his father isn't particularly strong, yet Kratos continues running with all his might, risking everything to save others. Kratos stumbles. The slicing winds are too powerful. He drops the lightning rod and crashes hard onto the ground. That's when little Steak decides to intervene. He takes flight, enters the storm, positions himself before the tornado, draws a deep breath, and unleashes a massive ice barrage directly into the wind's center. Barely conscious, Kratos realizes that Steak used his power to slow the wind, but such an effort is far too much for a baby dragon. The tornado keeps advancing, but at that moment, the crew arrives and carries everyone to safety. In the next chapter, we return to the castle. Kratos lies in bed looking extremely uncomfortable. That's when Hartok and Sergei enter. Are they really planning to kill our boy while he's vulnerable? Hartok says that while the Demon King is unconscious, he'll slice his head clean off. Sergei agrees. Afterward, they'll eliminate Baal and Azurette, then decide which of them becomes the next Demon King. Hartok accepts those terms. For now, they'll be allies. The door creaks open. Approach the bed, ready to strike, but both suddenly freeze. Critter doesn't look unconscious. His expression is terrifying, making them question everything. Has he been awake this entire time? Is he watching them right now? Still, they press forward. This is their only chance. Just as they're about to attack, Azurette and Baal arrive. Azurette looks like he's endured hell after spending 10 entire chapters as a lightning rod. Baal tells them the Demon King is sleeping and warns them not to disturb his rest. But after seeing Kratos' face, they can't believe that expression belongs to an unconscious man. Baal warns that if they attempt to kill him and accidentally wake him, they already know what will happen. Hartok says he understands why that musclehead is loyal, but asks Azurette why he's siding with this farmer. Azurette says it's only this once. He'll kill Kratos next time, but for now he owes him his life. Hartok argues that these potatoes have brought nothing but trouble. If the plan fails, everyone will starve. Azurette replies that this is exactly how it works. Anyone who doesn't want to starve must be willing to risk their life. He admits he'd rather risk his life in battle than in farming, but the situation is what it is. Hartok scoffs and calls them both fools, and walks away, muttering that they'll regret this soon. Suddenly, someone yawns. Kratos wakes and notices Azurette. Azurette quickly says, "Don't misunderstand, Demon King, I'm only repaying my debt." But Kratos narrows his eyes and asks why his lightning rod is walking around and talking. Azurette hesitates for half a second, and bam, he's electrocuted. Moments later, his clothes are gone, and he's dragged back to the lightning post once again. Kratos announces that he's ready to resume working, but Bo says they've already removed nearly all the rocks with Zephyros' help. When Kratos goes to inspect the area, he finds Zephyros ordering everyone around. Kratos asks where all the rocks went. Zephyros points toward the sky, and there is Steak, flying around, carrying rocks in his mouth and dropping them far away. Seeing the little creature help like that reminds you of other tiny companions from certain fantasy stories, doesn't it? Meanwhile, Steak thinks he may be too small to fight a tornado, but this is something he can do. Kratos calls out to him, scoops him up, and pets him with a slightly sinister smile. But Steak seems accustomed to it now and might even enjoy it. Kratos feels confident. If the Razor Winds return, Steak can counter them, provided they predict their arrival. Zephyros approaches and warns that they're running low on potatoes to reward the workers. He asks whether they should begin stockpiling. Kratos shakes his head. A farm's first enemy is natural disaster, and its second is cost. Those are the two barriers they must overcome. Elsewhere inside the castle, Sergi removes her helmet, and hold on a moment. Is she actually a gorgeous elf woman? Yes, the only drawback is that she reeks of manure after working in the fields all day. There's also the minor matter of her 6 arms. Still, let's be honest, some of you probably wouldn't hesitate. I would never suggest that a bath could fix everything. Just then, someone knocks and asks to speak with Sergi. She recognizes the Demon Lord's voice. She immediately replies that they have nothing to discuss. He politely asks her to open the door, but she insists that she wants no interaction with him. He says they can't resolve anything without speaking face to face, then announces that he's coming inside. She turns and shouts at him not to break the door, but he's already using his familiar glitch. Suddenly he's calmly standing before her, while she wonders why he barged into a lady's room. Without warning, Kratos drops to his knees. She's completely confused. Then he says he truly can't accomplish anything without her. For a moment, she's caught off guard, and then her cheeks turn bright red. Meanwhile, Kratos thinks that if this is what saving money requires, he'll kneel. What he needs right now is a sharp blade. Flustered, Sergi twirls her hair like a princess, saying that when he asks her like that, how could she possibly refuse? Kratos is completely confused and has no idea what's happening. Clearly, this girl loses her composure far too easily. Cut to them standing before a massive pile of potatoes. Kratos tells her that he needs every potato sliced in half for planting. Reality immediately strikes Sergi, leaving her feeling deceived. Still, it's somewhat of an improvement. At least she's slicing adorable potatoes instead of shoveling manure. Naturally, Kratos asks her to make precise cuts, keeping the little green sprouts on opposite halves. He holds up 2 potatoes and tells her to separate them, and tosses them into the air. Before she can refuse, she draws her sword and slices them cleanly in midair. Kratos jumps back in shock, amazed that she cut them so perfectly. He turns and says he was right. She's the only one capable of something like this. He's a master manipulator, and Sergi is especially vulnerable to such praise. But she regains her composure, swearing she won't fall for it again, until he gives her that look and gently takes her wrist. He steps closer, making her blush deeply, then wipes the blade clean, until it shines. Sergi asks, "What are you doing, Demon King?" Kratos explains that potato juice is on the blade, so naturally he has to clean it. Sergi's thoughts race. Is he insane? Why does his gaze feel so warm, sincere, and intense? Kratos calmly thinks that a clean blade is essential for hygiene, especially since she was chopping manure not long ago. Then he asks her once more. She's the only person he can rely on for this task. Sergi turns away with flushed cheeks and agrees, saying she'll help only this once, while thinking that the foolish Demon King truly can't do anything without her. Kratos immediately runs off like an excited child, shouting that she's amazing and that he'll fetch water because they'll be cutting all night. As potatoes begin flying, Hartok hears voices nearby saying things like, "Don't hold my hand that way, stretch your arms out." He peers inside and sees the Demon King assisting his precious little servant. Hartok immediately realizes Sergi has become another brainwashed fool, voluntarily working for Kratos in exchange for a few compliments. Meanwhile, Azrit remains outside beneath the sun, wondering about life's meaning, his goals, and what the future holds for a lightning rod. Then Flute arrives and suggests playing their potato-throwing game again. He tells the low-class brat to leave, promising to eat her alive once he's free. But she continues pelting him with potatoes anyway. Once again, Hartok watches from nearby. Now he's certain Azrit is beyond saving. Then someone shouts that the potatoes have arrived. It's Baal and Zephyros, carrying massive piles of them. Hartok merely stares. Even Bo is hopeless, especially with intelligence so far below average. The demons crowd around Sergi, thanking her repeatedly, and saying none of this would have been possible without her. She awkwardly tells them to stop because she didn't do it for their sake. Hartok watches and notices the soft, fluttering look in her eyes. That's not the expression of a cold-blooded demon's general. Watching demons cry over potato seeds is absurd. They should be ashamed. Everyone here is an idiot. But Hartok, the intellectual pinnacle of demonkind, will be the one to seize the throne. Kratos tells everyone to continue planting. Soon, something wonderful will sprout from the soil. When that happens, they'll need to remove some of the sprouts from each plant. Baal volunteers to do the cutting, but Kratos tells him to be quiet and continues explaining. He says each planted potato can produce between 3 and 6 sprouts. Then he asks whether having more sprouts or fewer sprouts is better. The demons naturally shout that more is better. Kratos immediately says they're wrong because fewer is better. Hartok's eye twitches at this pathetic discussion. The demons ask how fewer could possibly be better. Wouldn't more sprouts produce more food? Hartok can't tolerate it any longer. Truly are brainless. If too many sprouts grow, they'll compete for nutrients. That means the potatoes you harvest will contain fewer nutrients. Kratos turns toward him and asks, "Wait, how do you know that?" Hartok says it's obvious. If every sprout feeds from the same potato, the final result will naturally be weaker. Kratos nods and asks how many sprouts would be ideal. Hartok rolls his eyes and says 2, obviously. 1 would be ideal under perfect conditions, but 2 provide a backup if 1 fails. Kratos urges him to continue. Hartok grumbles that the answer is obvious. Since the soil is now extremely fertile, other plants may steal its nutrients. That's why they need to direct everything toward the potatoes. In other words, they must remove anything that isn't a potato plant. Anyone with half a brain could have figured that out within a minute. Kratos applauds and tells everyone to clap, because they clearly have a genius among them. Everyone begins chanting, "Genius, genius, genius." Hartok becomes overwhelmed. His mother always called him an idiot. Now tears stream down his face, though even he doesn't understand why. Kratos smiles and calls his name. "At last I've found someone wise and brilliant among demon kind. From this day onward, Hartok will lead the farming division." Hartok thinks the idea is absurd. His intelligence was meant for theft and murder. But Kratos turns and orders everyone to show proper respect to the elite of their race. Everyone begins chanting, "Elite, elite." Hartok wants to murder every last one of them. Instead, he steps forward and tells them to listen carefully to his instructions. Kratos watches from the background, knowing his plan worked as the demons cheer. He has won yet another psychological battle. He recognized Baal's neglected heart and transformed him into a loyal subordinate. He gave Azurad a friend after Azurad swore he'd never have one, even softening his violent personality. He softened Sergi, a girl who had never experienced love, and gave Hartok the validation he'd always wanted, simply being recognized. Every one of these demons had a fragile heart. As a result, Kratos earns 200 happy points and unlocks a new ability. Blood Eye. Kratos tilts his head, because he doesn't remember ever unlocking that ability before. It allows him to see the future of anything he observes, though currently only up to 6 hours ahead. It works not only on living beings, but also on objects. Then he realizes something. The lunatic has finally figured it out. He can predict the weather. The next chapter begins somewhere between the Lost Lands, demon territory, and the human domain. The place is known as the Village of the Exiled. And guess who's there? Lloyd with Javier's hair, and Javier with Lloyd's hair. Good Lord, Javier looks strange, and he thanks Lloyd for taking such good care of him. Looking even uglier than usual, Lloyd says he'll work hard, earn a fortune, and boss everyone around. At least that hasn't changed. Suddenly, Javier turns to old Kimchi and asks whether he plans to return to the demon kingdom with them. The blonde man pauses and says he isn't sure. As he said before, he doesn't know who he is and can't remember any humans around here. Furthermore, the first people he met didn't seem interested in becoming friends. So where could someone like him ever be accepted? The 2 Walmart versions glance at him and suggest, beginning by changing his clothes. They all set off, and although he wraps himself in cloth, the same outfit remains underneath. Kimchi keeps thinking that he wants to tear it off, but for some mysterious reason the clothing won't come off. It seems fused to his skin, as though it's literally part of his body. Before leaving, Javier tells one of the men he'll ask the king to investigate the village. Living in exile here is unbearable. Watching him, Kimchi notices that the boy is genuinely noble. Even this close to demon territory, he risks himself for others without showing arrogance. He's a decent person. This makes Kimchi wonder what kind of person he once was. Judging from his memories, he seems to have wandered around killing everything. Now he has no idea what someone like him is supposed to do besides kill. Back in demon territory, everyone gathers around the first newly emerged sprout. They shout excitedly that the first tiny sprout has finally broken through the soil. All the demons rush over to see it, completely amazed. Flute runs to tell Azura, who snaps that he'll eat her if she comes over one more time. Kratos arrives and announces that it's time for the next phase. He tells the unmatched genius of demonkind to explain the process. Hartok immediately steps forward, radiating confidence, and explains that they must now build a mound of soil around each potato plant to shield it from sunlight. Potatoes exposed to direct sunlight lose their flavor and can even become poisonous. Kratos praises him, telling everyone that no one is more brilliant. Even little Steak claps happily. And Kratos looks upward and says it's time to check today's weather. He spent 200 happy points upgrading the ability. The only problem is that activating it requires staring continuously at the sky for 200 seconds, which hurts. The demons whisper that the demon lord is crying because he's overwhelmed by the sight of the first sprout. After some time, the system pings and confirms today's forecast. Sunny and dry, they need to water the field. That's excellent news for Stake, who gets the day off. At that moment, Zephyros arrives with urgent news. A subordinate of the 2nd Division's commander has arrived. Back at the castle, a man introduces himself as Loplo, a resident of the 2nd region. Apparently, the 3rd Division launched a surprise attack as soon as they heard about the ceasefire. They claim the Demon Lord has weakened and that anyone can now seize the throne. Zephyros explains that if the 3rd Division defeats the 2nd, they'll probably join forces, creating a threat that won't be easy to stop. Kratos knows they must intervene, but he can't abandon the farm either. Worse still, the area under attack is called the Swamp of Decay, an absurdly distant and enormous place. Unfortunately, the abandoned well he used for teleportation in the game no longer works. Now he must figure out how to balance warfare with agriculture. As he thinks, Stake licks his face until Kratos finally reaches a decision. The boss doesn't need to leave the castle. Sergi, who now walks around blushing constantly, insists that she isn't fighting for him. Meanwhile, Ball vows to obey any order, no matter what it is. Krigos decides these block-headed demons are the best ones to send into battle, since they're completely useless at farming. It's rather bold, considering he depends on Sergi for nearly everything. He explains that because they're leaving the boss area, returning to the previous base should activate some kind of automatic teleportation mechanic. He doesn't fully understand it, but it should get them there quickly. With that, he orders them to move out. At the swamp, a wooden-looking demon kneels down and asks how Hell Rustler could betray the Demon King like this. The demon is none other than Planus, master of the 2nd region. Someone approaches and calmly explains that this isn't a rebellion, but simply a huge misunderstanding. All he wants is for the war to continue, because stopping now would drive the demon race to extinction. Peace would destroy them. Planus argues that everyone trusts Kratos to make agriculture sustainable, so they won't need to fight humans just to survive anymore. But Rustler fires back that this isn't the problem. The real issue is that fighting with honor defines the pride of the demon race. Just as he raises his massive hammer to strike, bam, something hits the weapon and sends it flying. He turns around, and there stand Sergi and Ball, who have just arrived. Sergi steps forward and says, "You're right, we are a race of warriors. We love roaming around and slaughtering everything in our path. But when did we become this way? And why are we forced to live like this?" Cut to Flute, bursting through the door and shouting for her father to come see the fields. Sergi continues, saying that perhaps it's finally time they understood something important. Saving lives instead of taking them might give them a far greater sense of pride. Back at the farm, the fields have burst into bloom. Everyone watches in awe, and even Azurat, our poor demon lightning rod, has tears gathering in his eyes. Those two clever elites who always behave like twins watch closely, and our demon lord stands silently, watching everyone celebrate while, for once, not a single soul is fighting. Flute approaches the demon lord, looking as sweet and adorable as ever. He looks magnificent. She says she's never seen anything like this, while he simply stands there with a small grin. Meanwhile, back amid the chaos, good old Sergi uses all 6 arms to beat the hell out of that fool Rustler, who gets trapped by the bucket and continues taking a beating. Man, this looks like Azurat all over again. Out in the fields, Krios confirms that countless beautiful flowers have bloomed, and there are truly a lot of them. Rustler keeps complaining that they promised not to kill anyone, yet their words and actions don't match. Sergi admits that he's right, but unfortunately, sometimes one person must be eliminated to protect everyone else. Back with Kratos, he orders every flower in the field to be cut down. Everyone stands there in shock. Even Asura paces around, saying the Demon King is far too cruel. Hartok agrees that showing no mercy to such a beautiful field is heartless. But once the order is given, and demons begin pulling up the flowers, the little plants start crying and collapsing, begging not to be cut. No one has ever witnessed anything like it. The sight is simply too beautiful. Hartok explains that they don't understand how those plants are stealing nutrients and sunlight. It's all part of the Demon Lord's master plan to redirect energy toward the growing potatoes. So they pull them out, suffering as the plants die, while Kratos, now looking exactly like Lloyd, shouts that he can hear the growing potatoes screaming. Back in the chaos, Rustler has already been beaten and dragged before Kratos, who announces that this is what happens to anyone considering rebellion. The front line has already fallen, so what will Rustler do now? Rustler tells them to kill him, refusing to serve a demon lord who has abandoned his pride. He would rather, bam, he gets electrocuted. Problem solved. Just when you think it can't get worse, he blurts out that his body is a complete suit of armor, so the attack only tickled. $1 to anyone who can guess what happens next. Naturally, they turn him into an antenna and blast him with lightning again. And Kratos orders another antenna installed nearby. Rustler is losing his ability to heal, so it's time to retire him. The ropes release him, and Asura can barely walk in a straight line. Flute runs over sweetly, calling his name. He turns and says she has humiliated him for far too long. Now it's her and Credo's turn to be devoured. She stares in shock, while he charges at her like a demon all twisted up, then collapses like an idiot. He hasn't walked properly in ages, so he has no strength left. Baal tells him to stop using such grand, dramatic words as though he were still his old self. He lifts him into his arms while Azurad screams not to carry him like a princess. And strangely enough, he's carried away with a blanket draped over his back. Baal announces that it's the Demon King's order, so he'll remain like that for a while. Oddly, the man blushes while muttering that he'll never forgive this humiliation. Asheric is carried away while Kratos remembers using that cursed eye on him and seeing he'd be paralyzed and unable to walk for 6 hours, so everything is fine. Then he announces that harvest time is approaching and everyone needs to work faster. With Sergi's 6 arms, cutting the plants is effortless. Hartok uses his mist storm to water everything. The autumn harvest isn't far away, but unfortunately their rations are running out. Although demons are accustomed to starvation, their efficiency is clearly beginning to decline. That's when Lapelos returns, saying Master Planus has come to express his gratitude for being rescued. Kratos raises an eyebrow and asks what gratitude he's talking about, leaving the demon visibly confused. Strangely, the protagonist glares daggers at him while the tree demon stands there without understanding why. Kratos is furious because the idiot came to thank him without bringing even a single gift. Lapelos then says they're gathering the third master's subordinates and will soon send workers. Kratos thinks the potatoes are growing well. A huge harvest will come soon and he needs to make a substantial profit from it. Before anything else, he wants to see everyone's stomachs full. But one question remains. Why did he begin farming in the first place? He can barely remember anymore. Laplo asks whether he can summon the troops, and Kratos tells him to hurry. He remembers that the third master was among the weakest and least developed of them. They greatly admired strength, yet still remained loyal to Kratos, despite him not being particularly powerful. More importantly, they all resemble trees and plants, so perhaps they'll be useful for agriculture. As Laplo walks around, he can feel it. The soil is unbelievably fertile. It's filled with nutrients unlike anything he experienced in the decaying swamp. When he was only a tiny sprout, the soil where he grew contained nothing. But this land, cultivated by Kratos, is entirely different. He says he can feel himself growing stronger, then crashes into the wall and plants his roots, declaring that he will now become the Demon Lord. Oh boy, he's definitely asking to be chopped down. In the next chapter, the blazing sun rises, and Kratos orders everyone to prepare for training. The demons raise their arms upward, to one side and the other, shouting a series of bams. I'm not sure what that means. It might be some kind of Korean military drill. Who knows? Kratos is training them to react quickly to commands, especially unexpected ones. Suddenly, he orders everyone to roll left, and they execute it perfectly. Then he orders them to roll right, and they nail that too. That's when Bale arrives with terrible news. Something dreadful has happened. Every potato plant has turned yellow. When they reach the fields, everything appears dead. Seeing the devastation, Zephyros says he expected this to happen. It was impossible from the very beginning. Sergi lowers her eyes, and Hartok admits he doesn't know what went wrong. Perhaps there wasn't enough wind or water, but then he blames himself, calling himself a fool for believing they could grow anything here. Kratos silently walks forward, kneels, grabs a plant from the soil and pulls. That's when everyone sees 5, perhaps 6 enormous potatoes. Hartok is completely bewildered. These potatoes are paler in color, but they're massive. Kratos simply says that the potatoes have awakened. As they grew, they absorbed every nutrient from the leaves, causing the plants to turn yellow. All he can say is that everyone did an incredible job. Every person there helped bring them to life. The group takes a deep breath, and Bowl is visibly emotional. Sometime later, Kratos lies on the world's most uncomfortable bed without even a blanket. He remembers talking about helping everyone grow together, just like his grandmother once said when he cared for a plant and helped it grow. Sadly, not long afterward, an ambulance arrived and took her away. He rolls over, muttering that sentimentality is pointless. A cold, calculating person like him doesn't need such feelings. Soon they will have enough potatoes, but they still can't lower their guard. If they depend entirely on potatoes, the same thing that happened to the Irish Empire could happen to them. Apparently, there was an incident when the soil suddenly stopped producing potatoes for no clear reason, causing widespread starvation. We complain about life, but starving to death while everyone around you dies of hunger is truly horrific. Kratos thinks deeply, realizing they'll soon need new seeds. When the ground suddenly begins shaking, he wonders whether the castle was poorly constructed. But then the earth suddenly splits open, and countless roots burst up before him. He immediately shouts, demanding to know what the hell is happening. Back in the field, Flute examines several leaves and notices them melting away and vanishing into thin air. That shouldn't be happening. They're meant to wither naturally, not disappear as though something is eating them. She instantly realizes something is wrong and begins digging. But when she pulls up the plant, there's no potato beneath it. She knows she must inform the adults. But when she looks toward the castle, she sees it completely surrounded by roots. Worst of all, Kratos is pinned down and completely immobilized by the Lord of the Third Region, who calls Lord Kratos nothing more than a filthy little insect. Kratos recognizes him as Planus, who thanks him for supplying such fertile soil and rich nutrients. Thanks to Kratos, he was able to grow this enormous. From a distance, Kratos notices that the entire field is empty, and demands to know what the bastard did to their food. Planus finds his anger amusing and asks what someone like him could possibly do. Then he violently jerks Kratos aside and slams him flat onto his back. Kratos immediately coughs up blood. Hartog rushes in, yelling for everyone to evacuate, while Bull summons the others to help the Demon King. But Asura and Sergi say it's useless, cause Planus is far stronger than any of them. Bull then reveals that he knows the Demon King is actually weak. He realized it when Kratos struggled to pull himself up that cliff. He's extremely fragile now. The ground crumbles around them, and Planus looks absolutely enormous. He opens a crater so vast that Kratos falls straight into the abyss. Respect to Bull, who knew Kratos was weak yet still never betrayed him. At that moment, Zephyros recognizes Planus, who makes an announcement to every demon listening. Kratos is dead. He reminds them of the ancient laws of demonkind. Power rules everything. And from this moment onward, he is the Demon Lord. Everyone must kneel before absolute strength. Hartok immediately senses that this man absorbed every last nutrient from the land. If Kratos is truly dead, then Planus is unquestionably the strongest now. Without hesitation, he kneels, thinking demons are destined to obey overwhelming power. Even Sergi and the entire group drop to one knee. What other choice do they have? Zephyros looks utterly stunned. Azurette turns to him and asks what he's waiting for. He should show respect to their new lord. It's obvious now that Zephyros may be the most sincere of them all, and even Kratos once said he was genuinely loyal. He kneels reluctantly, trembling all over. Planus stands proudly, behaving as though he owns everything. Zephyros is even crying now, when suddenly Kratos sees himself speaking with his mother. She asks whether he wants to play hide and seek. He recognizes that day and asks whether this is a dream. His mother, already painfully thin and likely ill, says she'll close her eyes, count from 1 to 10 and search for him. That's brutal. Afterward, she probably vanished forever, didn't she? Well, Kratos begins counting to 10. Poor child. Life truly treated him cruelly. After finishing the count, he tells her she can come out now. There he stands, crying uncontrollably. I genuinely feel sorry for our Demon King. The poor man can't even maintain his composure before his own memory. Then the system chimes, telling Jonquiel to wake up. He's unconscious somewhere, entangled in roots, wondering whether that voice was a system message. He asks where he is and whether he died. The system simply tells him to move, because that's the only way he'll survive. Kratos tries activating quantum movement, but there's no room. He can't shift even a single centimeter. His hands won't move, and what little energy remains is being drained. To keep himself conscious, he begins counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 10, repeating it over and over. Meanwhile, on the surface, Planus summons the scribe. Zephyros steps forward and immediately, Planus orders him to record this historic moment, documenting everything that has happened and everything that will follow. From now on, the demons will begin their invasion of humanity. Hartok's expression instantly changes. They have returned to the beginning, back to living in endless war, killing each other as demons have always done. That is the fastest way to fill their stomachs. So then, why does everyone feel so angry? Kratos continues counting from 1 to 10, although he can barely breathe. At that moment, Planus orders the demons to take up their weapons. They're going to war. Zephyros hesitates, saying that marching out now is impossible. Naturally, Planus shoots him a murderous glare, causing everyone nearby to tremble in fear. Zephyros explains that they can't wage war when only a few potatoes remain and the entire demon race is starving. They lack even the minimum supplies required for a march. Planus asks whether he's always been this foolish, then claims they actually have more than enough provisions. At that moment, he sends out a root that grabs Flute. Her father cries out immediately, while Asherette watches intently. Planus says they have always had plenty of weak, useless demons lying around, which makes them perfect food. Flute shouts that they aren't like that anymore. They no longer have to eat one another just to survive. Kratos found a way out for them, but Planus merely glares at her and drops her directly into the abyss. Buried beneath countless roots, Kratos feels his heartbeat slowing. The problem is, If he dies, everyone will return to starvation. So he activates his blood attack again to electrocute himself. He cannot bear the thought of anyone else dying from hunger. With that, he thrusts his arm upward and begins climbing directly through the earth. Meanwhile, Planus notices that Asura caught Flute just in time. The Demon King continues climbing, using his blood techniques to remain conscious. The problem is, he keeps digging, but the journey feels endless. He doesn't know whether this has even the slightest chance of working. The poor man is digging diagonally so naturally, he'll never escape that way. Back on the surface, Hartok, Sergi, and Butyl stand frozen, stunned that Azeroth actually opposed Planus. Flute remains in his arms, confused, while Planus asks whether he's completely lost his mind. Azeroth faces him courageously, until his expression shifts when he sees Planus preparing to attack. So he claims Flute is his food now and pretends to eat her, saying she's fresh and delicious. Naturally, Planus doesn't believe such nonsense, and lashes Azeroth across the back with a root whip, sending him flying. The poor man immediately loses consciousness. He's the weakest of them all and only just woke up. Zephyros glances over, and that's when Planus repeats his order for the final time, commanding everyone to prepare for war. But somehow Zephyros finds his courage and says there is no valid reason to obey. An attack flies toward him, but Bull's enormous axe blocks it. Planus turns and sees Bull awkwardly shielding Zephyros, saying the Demon King assigned him to count the harvested potatoes. Planus demands to know whether these fools are attempting a rebellion. From behind, Hartok calmly says that would be impossible. It's simply that Kriegos' agricultural initiative was far more efficient than an invasion, and therefore the more logical command to follow. And Sergi steps forward and says she has a question. Their previous demon lord showed them a path where no one had to die, so why should they return to war? Planus completely loses control, hurling roots in every direction, while shouting that he is the authority. He is authority itself. But they answer that authority must be justified. Now all the farming demons shout that Kratos is the true demon lord. Planus must repay them for the potatoes and everything else he stole. Planus unleashes a storm of roots, but Hardock casually sweeps his arm aside and creates a barrier of mist. What the hell? Their synchronization activates. Sergi leaps into Baal's hands and he launches her forward. She slices through every root trunk in her path. She reaches Planus' face and declares that she'll take his eye first. But considering his enormous size, one swing is enough to knock all 6 swords from her hands. At the same time, he entangles Baal, crushes Hartok, and declares that no one may challenge his authority. Everyone here will die and learn what happens to those who oppose him. Kratos is no longer the demon lord of this realm. That coward died without even attempting to fight. So what was so remarkable about him? Kratos was nothing. Someone asks why his self-esteem is so low. A hand suddenly rises and punches through the air, stopping the attack aimed at Zephyros. The entire trunk shatters instantly. Planus stares blankly while Flute smiles. The system announces that, in the face of death, Kratos has awakened the concentrated nutrition system. 10 minutes earlier, while Kratos dragged himself through the soil, believing everything was too difficult, he suddenly remembered his grandmother preparing food for him. She asks what he just said. Quietly, he repeats that life is too difficult. Why should he continue living when everything is always so painful? His grandmother looks at him, plucks something from a plant, and explains that it's because they're still only seeds. All living beings are like seeds. They must keep digging until they reach the surface and finally bloom. When the first one breaks through, it encourages the others, causing more and more sprouts to emerge from the same place, until eventually, everything becomes green. But he yells at her not to say such foolish things. Then why did his father work himself to death? Why did his mother abandon him? And why was he the rotten seed? None of it made sense. If he had to live, then he'd be selfish and think only of himself, just as his mother did. He was perfectly content being alone. Of course, everything changed when she was taken away in an ambulance, still insisting that they were only seeds. Kriegos repeatedly activates his blood attacks, and the system says he has endured the agony of death and rebirth. His spirit survived beyond its limit, allowing him to unlock the mana seed system. It was something he'd never encountered in the game. As a reward for 3 resurrections, his mana seed begins at level 3. The seed multiplies all his attributes by a fixed value. At that moment, the multiplier is 3 times. Seeing this, Kratos believes it may be enough to escape. Furthermore, there's an ability to concentrate every stat into a single attribute once per day for 10 minutes. He opens his eyes, with every stat now at 30%. He activates the human seed, causing everything to rise to 39%. Then he triggers the concentrated nutrition system, and every stat is poured into physical strength, increasing it to 155. He immediately begins lifting the earth around him, making the ground shake violently. Roots burst through the soil as his hand emerges. While standing face to face with Planus, Kratos hears him ask whether he truly survived down there. Kratos says the answer should be obvious, since he's standing right before him. Every demon sees that Kratos is alive and erupts in cheers, shouting that a bountiful harvest is coming. Even Stake runs over and clings to him in an embrace. Hartok celebrates. Both he and Sergi know Planus remains far too powerful. Bull senses it as well. Judging by Kratos' current power, there's no chance he can defeat Planus. Planus, however, says Kratos' return is perfect. Now he can kill him before all his subordinates. But Kratos calmly says that no one will be killed. Regardless of his enormous size, Planus still obeys the game's logic. Kratos only needs to remember that Planus uses larger versions of the same attacks. They're not very different from the patterns he trained the demons to evade. He orders everyone to stand. It's time for another training session. Just like that, they all rise to their feet. He calls for a quick jump to the left. They successfully dodge the attack. Then they jump right and avoid another. He orders them to duck, and they evade the next strike. Planus unleashes an entire combination of attacks, but they roll, weave, sidestep, and dodge every single one. He's baffled that none of his massive attacks connect. Kratos knows there's always a delay after those attacks. He can't exhaust Planus, so he'll need a different strategy. He performs a small spin and makes a deliberately provocative expression. Sure enough, Planus becomes enraged, launching roots in every direction. That's exactly what Kratos wanted, forcing him into a berserker pattern. In the game, you simply attack the boss, but in reality, a little taunting is enough. At that moment, he orders Stake to advance and unleash a barrage of ice, obscuring part of Planus' vision. Kratos knows brute force alone won't work against such a massive body, but he also remembers that Planus is ultimately still a plant, meaning freezing causes his tissues to expand and tear apart. The first roots snap, and Planus is completely caught off guard. Being frozen is the worst possible condition for him, especially while berserk, because he'll effectively destroy himself. Stake stumbles back toward Kratos, grabs his arm, utterly exhausted. Kratos praises him and asks Zephyros to care for him. Then he crouches and leaps upward, shouting that he'll finish the battle. He knows another weakness shared by tree-type monsters, the large hollow cavity in the center of their chests. He drives his fist directly into it, causing a crater to explode outward. Just as the monster begins collapsing, Kratos' concentration enhancement ends. He begins falling through the air while Planus staggers backward, his eyes rolling upward. It appears he has lost consciousness. Zephyros wonders aloud whether the monster is truly dead, but something feels wrong. Kratos can still see the body, although defeated monsters normally disappear. That's when he notices a second version of Planus appearing before him. The problem is that Kratos currently can't move at all, and man, this new form appears like a giant megazord. Every demon flinches, while Planus explains that he absorbed an unbelievable amount of nutrients. Although he nearly died, he redirected the remaining energy into a second body. He approaches Kratos and declares that, as the new demon lord, his mission is to flood the entire world with poison. Then he lunges at Kratos, ordering him to die. But circumstances have changed. Baal charges in with his axe and lands a powerful blow on Planus' neck. This time, the blade even sinks slightly into him. Still, it isn't enough, and Baal is hurled across the field. Sergi attacks next, striking the opposite side of his neck with a combination, but she receives a blow to the stomach. Meanwhile, Kratos repeats his earlier words. The other seeds are watching. Hartok joins the attack and strikes the back of Planus' head. Planus smashes him into the ground, roaring for these bastards to stop. But he has forgotten one more opponent. Azurit appears behind him and says, "This is for a bountiful harvest." He delivers a precise strike, sending Planus' head flying. As Kratos teeters on the edge of unconsciousness, he watches the monster's body disintegrate, along with its massive frozen form. Both disappear completely, dissolving into glowing green orbs, as foul-mouthed as ever. Kratos mutters that the bastard deserved every bit of it. Everyone remains motionless, watching the green particles descend. Hartok hears Zephyros preparing to record everything, including the betrayal and the Demon King's army's victory. At that moment, Hartok raises his arms and shouts Kratos' name, causing everyone to erupt in celebration. Sergi raises 3 of her arms, alongside everyone else. But suddenly, Kratos tells them all to stop. Everyone freezes. He looks to one side, then to the other, and realizes that every field has been destroyed. Their entire harvest must be replanted, meaning they'll remain hungry for some time. How can he persuade everyone to continue farming after this? He can't bring himself to force them down such a cruel path and make them endure starvation again. Everyone simply stares at him, What Kratos fails to notice, however, is that those glowing green orbs are landing on the ground and touching the leaves, which instantly begin recovering. The next chapter opens inside a cell, where someone says he's heard that the Demon Lord has changed considerably. It seems we're getting Zephyros' backstory, showing that he was born wearing a collar and glasses. The prisoners say it doesn't matter whether the Demon King has changed. In the end, they'll remain livestock under his rule. Just then an orc enters, gives everyone a cold stare, and unlocks the door. Everyone immediately rushes out in panic. The creature, however, looks confused because one boy simply stands there without moving. Then it grabs him by the chest and lifts him into the air. The child shows no reaction. The monster raises its enormous axe, preparing to strike his leg, but Kratos suddenly appears and grabs its head. He doesn't merely knock it aside, he sends the entire head flying. Then he approaches and asks the boy why. He showed no fear and didn't beg for his life. Zephyros replies that what he felt wasn't fear but relief. Whatever he did, they would remain livestock for the Demon King and eventually die. Dying now would only spare him further suffering. Kratos smiles and assures him that it's all right because he's different from the others. From now on, Zephyros will follow him and record the Demon King's deeds. Someone like him would be wasted as food, although for now, they still have to consume their own kind. Kratos promises that one day he'll end it. He will end the tragedy of demons devouring one another to survive. But now I'm confused, because our protagonist only recently entered this body. Apparently the former Demon King wasn't entirely evil either. So what truly happened? Zephyros simply stares at him, barely conscious. Then his expression changes. He turns away, walks forward, and takes hold of a shovel. Everyone watches as he begins digging. Seeing this, Hartok asks what the farmers are doing. At that moment, everyone's eyes brighten, and they rush away with tools in their hands. Kratos watches in astonishment. They're already planting again, singing happily as they work. Seeing this gives Kratos courage, and he rises to issue orders. They must search for any surviving potatoes, while teams 2 and 3 sharpen their hoes. Sergi and Zephyros will cut the remaining seed plants. Hartok will lead Team 1, while Asura retrieves the tools. Then he shouts that everything they're doing is for a bountiful harvest. Baal already has a rope clenched in his mouth, leading the demons carrying hoes as they charge across the fields. Kriegos reflects that he briefly forgot what agriculture has always been like. Natural disasters, pests, shifting weather, and constant change leave only one choice: dig the earth and plant again. In the end, life itself is war. That's when Flute notices a healthy little sprout nearby. She runs over and grabs it. As she pulls, she sees Rustler's arm protruding from the dirt on the opposite side. She keeps tugging while he begs for help. That's when Ashuret steps forward and tells the low-ranking demon girl to move aside, because he'll handle it. But when he pulls, an enormous potato larger than his entire torso emerges. It crashes directly onto Rustler's head, leaving him completely twisted. Nobody understands what just happened, so they immediately summon Kratos. Flute asks him to inspect the potato, which is larger than her head. He asks where she found it, and she explains that she pulled one sprout and several others emerged with it. That's when Kratos remembers how it worked in the game. After Planus is defeated, his body sinks into the ground, and leaves begin growing from that same soil. Since Planus had become so enormous, his body must have touched nearly the entire field. Kratos immediately orders every farmer to dig. Potatoes are probably buried everywhere, and they survived. Sure enough, the demons begin digging and pulling enormous potatoes the size of bowling balls from the ground. Kriegos watches in disbelief, as everyone carries crops resembling cannonballs. Zephyros turns to him and asks whether this is the bountiful harvest. Kriegos says yes, overwhelmed with relief. This is truly the legendary harvest that will allow everyone to eat. The next chapter is titled A Land in Ruins. It's time to see what's happening throughout the rest of the world. In the first region, Sarufo attempted a rebellion and was utterly destroyed. The heart of the ice spirit was shut down, his minions vanished, and the region became uninhabitable. In the second territory, following Planus' death, all his subordinates were left without direction, unsure what to do with their lives. In the third territory, the leader Rustler is currently being used as an antenna. Perhaps every one of his subordinates should also be punished for treason. The fourth territory belongs to a half-human, half-snake demon named Tartu, who is a fairly realistic character in the game. Kratos knows the residents of the second and fourth territories can be mobilized easily. The problem is that he can't summon everyone simultaneously. If he expands too quickly, he'll simply create too many mouths to feed, so he'll recruit them gradually while preparing for the next harvest. Zephyros arrives and says preparations for the next large-scale harvest are about to begin. Kratos approves, but warns everyone to manage the food vouchers carefully. Then a small black creature enters, saying the orders have already been delivered to every territory. Kratos asks whether anyone responded. The creature says no, because the 4th territory hasn't replied at all. Kratos asks why. The creature stammers its residents didn't say much. Didn't say much, why not? Kratos grabs him by the wings and screams at the damned demon to use his brain and gather useful information. The creature explains that almost no servants remain in the 4th territory. The region is practically deserted. Kratos realizes the fool never even asked why it became deserted, and dealing with such a useless assistant is unbearable. Zephyros remarks that, although Lord Kratos' behavior has improved slightly, he's still the ugliest demon of all. He then says he'll question the residents personally and determine what happened to the 4th territory's master. The small creature adds that, according to rumors, the master entered human lands. Apparently, he's collecting human corpses to use as fertilizer. Hearing this, Kratos freezes. According to the game, the moment demons begin their invasion, that cursed paladin appears and annihilates everyone. The only way to avoid that is to prevent any conflict, because once the paladin arrives, especially with Old Man Kimchi involved, it's over for everyone. Kratos immediately runs off, saying he must stop the 4th master at once. Zephyros asks whether he needs reinforcements, but Kratos refuses, saying he'll travel faster alone. He activates the human seed and concentrated nutrition, increases his dexterity, and races away like lightning. Near the abandoned demon lands stands a tower called the Paladin's Tomb, also known as the Tower of Life. In the story, Old Man Kimchi was supposed to meet Javier and Weird Lloyd there before discovering the isolated village. Slightly farther down the road lies Fort Magret, the border between demon and human territory. From atop the wall, a soldier of the Spideless reports that Javier is approaching with his dreadful servant, but something unusual is accompanying them, something they've never seen before. At the gate, a soldier named Wolkos asks where the rest of their troops are. Javier explains that they encountered a horde of monsters, and unfortunately none of the others survived. They never even reached demon territory. Wolkos bows his head and says exploring demon lands is indeed a difficult special mission. Those who died were all great warriors. But for now he tells Javier and Lloyd to rest and recover. Javier and Lloyd walk through, but Wolkos stops Old Man Kimchi, saying he isn't allowed to pass. The two companions turn around, and Kimchi gives Wolkos such an intense stare that the soldier immediately begins trembling. Javier, the knockoff Walmart version, begs Wolkos to allow Kimchi through. After all, Kimchi saved their lives and poses no threat. Then Lloyd steps forward, puts his hands in his pockets. It says that naturally this favor won't be free, only to be slapped across the face and knocked to the ground. Wolkos berates him, saying nothing is worse than having him for a son. He possesses only an ugly face and a rotten heart. The poor man lies there devastated. Was all that really necessary? Wolkos orders Old Man Kimchi to undress, warning that he'll be executed immediately if anything suspicious is found. Naturally, Javier is completely shocked. There's no doubt that Kimchi's outfit is the most suspicious clothing imaginable. Old Man Kimchi glances toward Lloyd, but suddenly, everyone senses something strange. Trumpets sound, and someone announces that something is approaching. In the distance, the demon army can be seen advancing toward them. Wolkos runs off, shouting for the battalion to prepare. The instant Kimchi sees the army, something takes control of him, like a command buried deep inside ordering him to kill. Meanwhile, Kratos races toward the battlefield, desperately begging them not to attack. If battle begins, every demon will be annihilated. But the troops are already advancing, smashing siege pillars against the gate. Arrows rain down, while demons prepare stones for the assault. The war has begun. The battering ram pounds against the gate, while everyone inside hides wherever possible. Thankfully, Kimchi remains standing with his head lowered, reflecting on how instinctively he wanted to throw himself into battle. Memories from his 19th reincarnation seem to surface, showing him advancing and slaughtering countless enemies. Had Javier not pulled him back, he would have charged in without hesitation. It reveals how naturally he could enter battle without considering what was right or true. Yet everyone else in the room is trembling in fear. Perhaps he truly should be the one to fight. The gate is about to collapse, and everyone stands frozen in terror. The instant it falls, the first wave of demons storms inside. R2 orders them to kill everyone and turn the corpses into fertilizer. Wolkos orders the bridges behind them destroyed. Everyone may die here, but they must stop the demons from reaching their homeland. And just like that, the bridge explodes. Honestly, I expected the knockoff Javier and Lloyd to appear for only 10 seconds, but they're still here, so we'll rename them Javier and Bloyd to avoid confusion. Javier hears the bridge collapse and says, "That's the end." Bloyd adds that they're completely doomed and will die here before he ever gets married. Javier tells him not to worry. He wouldn't have gotten married even if they survived. Bloyd says that in his next life, He'll be born a noble and force Gavir to work relentlessly. At least one of his wishes might come true. Just then, everyone clutches their heads as the first cobra-like demon smashes through the wall. It extends a long arm, grabs a little girl, who screams for her mother. Gavir prepares to intervene while Kimchi simply watches. Then, in an instant, the creature is vaporized. Gavir lands while holding the girl, and naturally, Kimchi was responsible. Now that Kimchi appears ready to join the fight, he leaps directly toward Tartu, landing face to face with him. Tartu is stunned that this strange man appeared so suddenly, carrying a small heart-shaped wand. More than anything, Kimchi's outfit confuses him, and he wonders about the strange feeling it gives him. Kimchi calmly orders him to kneel, saying he isn't in the mood to fight. Tartu scoffs and tells him to stop talking nonsense. Wearing such an outfit while giving orders, what does Kimchi intend to do if he refuses? Kimchi simply answers that Tartu's entire tribe will be annihilated. Tartu doesn't hesitate. Completely enraged, he charges forward with the first attack. As this unfolds, Kimchi thinks that perhaps this is his only choice. Fine, if this is his destiny, he'll accept it. He was born to kill demons. But just in time, Kratos arrives and lands a flying kick against Tartu's neck. Kimchi stands there in complete confusion, while Tartu crashes into the ground. At that moment, Kratos turns his head and locks eyes with someone, and of all possible people, it had to be him. Tartu tries addressing the demon lord, but Kratos stomps on his face mid-sentence and begins beating him mercilessly. Kratos shouts, "You disobedient bastard! Why are you invading the humans, you damned fool? Shut up, I'm going to kill you." He glances back, sees that Kimchi hasn't reacted, then stomps Tartu again, saying garbage like him shouldn't even exist. He's unfit to fight and should have remained in his territory, eating and living like the miserable coward he is, instead of acting selfishly. As he continues stomping, Kratos silently begs Kimchi to forgive them. If that level 9,999 monster attacks, he'll wipe out every demon. But then Kimchi says, "I know who you are. You're the demon lord Kratos, aren't you?" Kratos realizes that he'll apparently be the first to die. The nearby troops heard Kimchi identify him as the demon lord. They're all straining to overhear the conversation, though they're too far away to catch every word. Kratos turns and asks whether Kratos is supposed to be some kind of system name. But Kimchi doesn't even know what a computer is. He says he used the name as final confirmation, and is now completely certain. Kratos' eyes tremble. He knows there's no possibility of surviving this. His only option is to behave like this. He rushes forward, plants both hands on the ground, and drives his horn into the dirt. Every demon is shocked to see the demon lord performing a full handstand with his backside in the air. Kimchi stands there utterly confused. The demons whisper, wondering whether this is a special demon lord technique or some kind of threatening stance. Kimchi demands to know what the hell he's doing. Kratos calls it the grand reverence, the supreme expression of gratitude, loyalty, devotion, and every positive intention combined into one gesture. He's proving that he has no intention of invading human lands. His snake-like subordinate acted independently, which is why Kratos came all this way to stop him. Kimchi coldly says he doesn't trust the words of a demon, but Kratos keeps dragging his horn through the dirt, saying he'll continue begging until Kimchi believes him. The demons watch, wondering whether this is actually an intimidation technique, like a bull preparing to charge. Kratos thinks this is completely humiliating, but all the demons will die if he refuses. As their leader, he must protect them. A memory flashes through his mind, showing his father kneeling while someone, probably a customer, screams at him. Boss calls him pathetic for dropping to his knees simply because someone demanded it. His father continues apologizing and promising it won't happen again. Back then, Jankil couldn't understand why his father behaved that way. But now he understands. Sometimes you must accept humiliation to protect others. He continues striking his horn against the ground. Meanwhile, Kimchi thinks that Kratos' efforts are useless. He exists to destroy him. He intends to kill Kratos and free every demon from suffering. He raises his scepter, but even then, Kratos continues bowing his head to the ground. That's when Kimchi notices something. Kratos strikes his head against the earth 10 times, pauses briefly, then repeats it. There's an unusual rhythm, something strangely familiar. He remembers that during a previous life, he would count to 10 before jumping into a trap. For any action requiring precise timing, he always counted to 10 and then moved. Kratos remains on the ground, begging for forgiveness with genuine regret. Kimchi can sense it. These words and this manner of speaking are completely unlike the true demon lord. Now he wonders why this man is behaving this way before him. Finally, he tells Kratos to stop. Kratos rises, and Kimchi orders him to leave before he changes his mind and kills him. Kratos immediately smiles, throws the lizard demon over his shoulder, and expresses his sincere gratitude, promising to remain thankful for life. Then he shouts for the entire army of the 4th region to retreat immediately. The snake demons are confused and unsure what's happening, but when the demon lord gives an order, they obey. They turn and march away, passing Kimchi, who stands there with his eyes closed. Naturally, Tartu can't control himself. Seeing Kimchi's back turned, he calls him a worthless worm and charges toward him. He launches an attack. Kratos shouts for him to stop, but it's already too late. With a single flick of his arm, Kimchi slices Tartu cleanly in half, hurling him into the wall like an insignificant insect. Blood splatters everywhere. Kratos begins trembling as Kimchi turns to stare at him. He knows there can be no excuse now. But Kimchi says he understands that this wasn't Kratos' will, it was Tartu's own decision. Then he turns away and says that if he ever sees Kratos' horn in human territory again, Kratos should understand that it will mean his death. That was close. Kratos never could have survived against someone at level 9,999. The next chapter opens with Gavir and Bloyd asking, "What happened to Lord Kimchi?" He simply answers that there was a fight. That's when Wolkos arrives and asks whether he's truly the legendary old man Kimchi. He says everyone is stunned that Kimchi destroyed the demons with one attack and made the entire army bow. They have gathered to apologize. Gavir hears this and says he knew Kimchi was powerful, but never imagined he was that strong. Wolkos then orders everyone to shout their gratitude. Watching this, Kimchi thinks that in his 20th life he has finally escaped the endless cycle of death. For the first time, he chose mercy, although technically he still killed 2 demons. He begins removing his outfit, and everyone around him is clearly bewildered by what they're seeing. Meanwhile, back in the 4th region, Kratos races through the chaos with humans pursuing behind him. They've finally arrived, although bringing this entire group here was a nightmare. He orders everyone into the castle and tells them to remain there. If anyone enters human territory again, they'll all die. The demons try explaining that they were following orders, but he interrupts them. He doesn't care about excuses. They must stay inside and remain still. The only problem is that Kratos has no shortcut back. No teleportation, nothing. He has to walk, and the place is enormous. He spots one of the abandoned wells and says it would be a miracle if it worked. Unfortunately, he'd already checked several of them, and none were functioning. All he wanted was a quick teleport, but those wells only activate for paladins. But then, thank goodness, the system activates. Because of his encounter with the paladin, the abandoned well system has now been unlocked. Instantly, he's pulled into the well. Now, every well he's previously visited is active, and the system asks where he wants to go. He immediately chooses the castle, and boom, he's transported away. Over at the ruins, Azure and Flute are searching for undamaged farming tools. Then suddenly, a blue light flashes from the ground, and Kratos bursts onto the scene right in front of her. The poor girl faints instantly, collapsing unconscious. Azure watches as Argai finally arrives, only to vomit immediately. Then he throws himself forward to shield poor Flute from getting drenched. Kratos wonders what just happened. He expected teleportation to be much smoother than this. As Flute rushes over to help Asura, Kratos thinks that even vomiting was worth avoiding that long walk. Now he can finally return to growing potatoes. Sometime later, he looks up at the mountain. He says that no matter how often he sees it, the view remains incredible. But something feels wrong. He can sense it. Something isn't right. He picks up one of the potatoes and says, "Wait a moment." He tosses several others aside and says none of them have it. Zephyros asks what he means. Kratos explains that none of the potatoes have sprouts. In other words, they're edible, but sterile like old men who can no longer have children. Back inside his temporary castle, he explains that no matter how enormous these potatoes are, they can't produce anything new. Hartuk says some unnatural change during the process probably caused the potatoes to grow so large. Ball says they won't even be able to eat them, but Sergi corrects him. They can eat them, just not plant them. Kratos says they couldn't rely on potatoes forever anyway. They're highly vulnerable to disease, and once one becomes infected, the entire crop can be ruined. Either way, they need to begin growing something else. Asura asks what could possibly grow in a place like this besides potatoes. Kratos answers nothing, but then he adds that he knows a place filled with every kind of seed and ideal conditions for growing countless crops. Naturally, he's talking about human territory. Ball immediately gets excited, shouting that the invasion and looting are starting again. But Sergi tells him to shut up. She knows perfectly well that no one hates war more than the Demon King himself. Kratos tells Zephyros to oversee the construction work. Hartuk will assist him and supervise the farms. Meanwhile, Kratos, Sergi, Ball, and Asura will travel to human territory. They'll sell potatoes and use the money to purchase seeds. All he needs to do is make sure he doesn't run into the like on this video.